Good morning. My name is Dave, one of the pastors here at ACC. I just want to take a minute before we get into the message and honestly just say happy birthday to our lead pastor, Pastor Rob. He's not here, but he probably will look at this online. So let's give him a hand clap. Let's show him how much we love him. Pastor Rob, I just want to say from the stage, is a joy to serve with. He is an incredible man. He is an incredible Christ follower, and he's an incredible pastor, and it's just a privilege to get to serve with him. So just wanted to shout him out on his birthday. Not going to tell you how old he is. I would just call it old. So as I was preparing for the message this week, I was just thinking about different things that, maybe something that you were looking forward to, something that you thought that you were going to enjoy, maybe something you thought that you were going to use that was going to be, helpful to you. And then the experience of it just fell flat. Like the experience of eating it or tasting it, the experience of using the product, it just kind of fell flat. It did not meet your expectations, did not do for you what you thought it was going to. For me, this past week, I went with some people to the bank, and I was just hanging out. I was just along for the ride, and the bank had these cookies that were laid out. They were prepackaged little cookies, and they had a chocolate chip cookie. And normally, I see a prepackaged cookie, and I'm like, nah, it doesn't look that great. I'm not gonna use that. But this cookie actually looked pretty decent. So I opened up the package, I took a bite. My friend who was with me asked me if the cookie was any good, and my response was, it's not worth it. It is not a good cookie. It was a little dry, a little crumbly, not my favorite type of cookie. And I mean, it is sugar, so sugar's okay. Sugar, people like sugar, but it is not something that I would have chosen to eat if I had known what it was going to taste like. Something else, and I know some of you are going to not like me for this, something else that I had high hopes and expectations for that has always let me down is Dutch Brothers coffee. I don't know about you, I want my coffee to taste like coffee, not sugar milk. And that is exactly what Dutch Brothers coffee tastes like, just milk with sugar in it. Where's the coffee? And so my wife loves it. She loves sugar milk. That's how she makes her regular coffee taste, and that's what she loves. Just not my cup of coffee. But these different things in our lives that we are hoping is going to be something that we enjoy, is hoping that's going to bring us some sort of fulfillment, that is going to bring us a little bit of joy, and they just kind of fall flat. And I was thinking about that. There have been times in my life where I've tried other things, and a little bit more serious than coffee and cookies, but things that I've tried to find fulfillment and purpose through. Things that fell flat, things that did not work, did not give me the hope and the purpose that I wanted them to. The one thing that I really struggled with early on in my marriage, early on in my life, was work. I wanted work to mean something. I wanted my work to give me purpose. I wanted my work to give me fulfillment, and it was something that I really loved. It was something that I really enjoyed, and I would pursue it and give more time to it than I should have. And I was in a unique situation where the work that I was doing was actually ministry. And so for me, I got into this really weird spot where I was valuing the work that I did for God over my relationship with Him. I was valuing the work that I was doing over my relationship with Him. And it actually led to some issues in our marriage that we had to work through, where my wife was legitimately jealous of the amount of time that I would spend on work at the church. And for me, I'm looking at it, well, this is work that I'm doing for God. This just means that I'm prioritizing God and not realizing that there's a separation between the work and the relationship. And it led to some problems in our marriage, and it never, you see, because when I was working, I was always like, if I just put a little bit more time, if I just give it a little bit more, then at some point, it's going to get me to the other side, and then all the work will have been worth it, and it will be easier, and it will be something that I can enjoy, something that I can go back to a regular family life balance. But it never happened. How many things in our lives do that to us? Where we want different things to give us joy, to give us fulfillment, to give us purpose, and we think we know what it is. And we keep trying, and we keep trying, and it just never fulfills it. It always comes up short. And my question for us this morning is, where do you try to find fulfillment? What are the areas where you try to find that fulfillment and that purpose? The first one is work. That was something that I've struggled with in my life. The things that I did, I wanted to find identity and purpose and fulfillment based on the work that I did. And the problem with that is that if that is where you find your identity, your purpose, and fulfillment, when it is taken away, it destroys you. And it's never going to get you to the other side. So work, something that I struggled with. Maybe it's a relationship for you. I think our single people in the room can absolutely feel this at times, where they hope and they put a lot of hope and a lot of expectation into the idea that a relationship is going to fulfill them and give them purpose. Maybe it's not a romantic relationship, maybe it's a friendship. Maybe it's somebody that you want to validate you. That you think that if you work hard enough for them, if you give them enough effort, that they will look on you and be proud of you, and that you'll finally have this sense of peace. And it just never seems to happen. The problem with trying to use relationships to find fulfillment and identity and purpose is that we are putting a lot of hope and a lot of ideas and a lot of expectation into somebody who is human, who makes mistakes, who will fail us, and who might leave us. And so maybe for you it's a relationship. Maybe it's a substance. Maybe it's something that you're just trying to, like you have a lot of stuff and you're just trying to use this substance to kind of medicate yourself or kind of work through something. Maybe it's alcohol, maybe it's drugs. Maybe you tell yourself that you don't have a problem, it's just to take a little bit to take the edge off. But you're trying to use it to escape or to try to find purpose or try to find peace. And I'm just telling you, the substance never brings peace. It will only destroy and ruin the life around you. Maybe it's not one of those. Maybe it's money. Maybe for you, it's that if you just had a little bit extra, like that everything would be all right. If you just got that raise or got that promotion, that your life would just, you think that it would just work if you had that, instead of being content with the things that God has given you now. And so you just keep working for it. You keep putting time into it. You keep putting your hope and your expectation that this is going to be the thing that makes a difference for you. But I don't know if you've noticed this, but our culture has a million stories about how that does not work. A million stories about people who have pursued money to the detriment of everything else in their life. And it only came up short. Because once they got to the end of it, the money did not fix their problems. They were still there. Or maybe, finally, another thing that I think that we can do is religion. And I know you're thinking, hey, Pastor, aren't we at church? Like, what are you talking about religion being something that we use? But I think what we do with religion is that we begin to move it out of, and it's kind of similar to what I would do with the work. It's not about the relationship anymore. Now it's about the behavior control. Maybe it's about the check boxes, if I do these things, then God will love me. And you begin to think about all the these and the thous and the I can'ts and the I shoulds and all of those different things, and that begins to be the thing that you're hoping that if I could just have enough self-control, that I would finally find the peace that I'm hoping for. I would finally make it to the other side. And the thing about this is that I feel like on some level there are a lot of us, and maybe you're here today, that they tried this and then they gave up. because it is too much, and it became too much. And it actually, because you tried all the rules and you did all the stuff and you checked off all the boxes, and you didn't feel the peace and the fulfillment and the purpose that somebody told you a relationship with Jesus was going to bring you, because you focused on the behavior and not the relationship. You focused on the outside instead of the inside. And how many of us have given up because we couldn't figure it out? Because you have to understand that we were created to need that purpose and fulfillment. That is how God created us. He created us to need it. Now, the problem that we have is that the world tells us we're supposed to fill it one way, and God tells us the only way to fill it is through relationship with Him. And how many times do we get distracted and try to fill that hole with something else? Because Jesus came to fill that spot. And the writer of the Gospel of John, he wanted us to see it, and he wanted to see that who Jesus was and what he came to do. At the end of the book of John, he says this. He says, Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. So John is closing his book talking about Jesus' life, and he's saying that Jesus did so much. And other translations actually say that Jesus did so much, this book can't contain it. And John's saying he performed many other things. But John wrote the things that he wrote. These are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in him, I don't want you to miss this, by believing in Jesus, you may have life in his name. It is by believing in Jesus that we can find our purpose in our fulfillment. John wrote these miracles, and he put them down because he knew that they were a sign that pointed to who Jesus is. And he wanted us to know who he was, and he wanted us to know the things that Jesus has come to do for us. And so this morning, we're going to look at his first miracle when Jesus turned water into wine. So let's get into our scripture this morning. Go back. I skipped a slide, please. In John chapter 2, verses 2 through 11, it says, on the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there. So we're going to a wedding. Jesus' mom is there. And it says, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. So we're at a wedding. We're at a party. For the Jewish people, this wedding was like a multi-day event, like a multi-day party, where they are celebrating the new couple and honestly coming together as a town, as a village to celebrate together and just have fun together. And so, verse 3, when the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. This was catastrophic. Yes, the wine's gone, catastrophe. But more than that, this is something that would follow the bridegroom's family, that would follow the new married couple for the entirety of their lives. Because they had one job when they came together to host this marriage, and it was to have enough. To have enough so that it lasted for the entire party. And I don't know why they didn't have enough. I don't know if it was they underestimated how much they would need. I don't know if it was they only had so much money to buy what they had. But they didn't have enough, and they ran out. And this was going to be a black mark on their life and their family for the entire time that they live in this village. And they were going to live in the village forever. They did not move around. Land was passed down by family. They weren't going anywhere. And so this was something that was going to follow them forever. And something that I want us to think about is that how many times have we started down the path of using something else to fill our lives, and it ran out. Like it felt like it was good at first, but it eventually ran out. Well, Jesus' mom, she just told him that. Jesus responds to her, he says, "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My hour has not yet come." Now, I want to point out a couple things. Number one, it looks like Jesus is being rude to his mom. And from the English standpoint, that's what it would look like, but that's not the case. Jesus is actually addressing her with honor as a woman. Now, there is a change, though, because he is not addressing her as mom. And so as Jesus is about to begin his ministry, there is a shift in their relationship. But he's addressing her with honor, and he says, "Why do you involve me? My hour has not yet come." Jesus is telling her, "You don't get to decide when I start my ministry. My Father and I get to decide when I start my ministry." But I think Mary had a conversation, and she knew what was going on, and so she knew what to do. Moms get stuff done. Amen. His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." And so Mary's like, just do whatever he tells you. And so Jesus, nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. I want us to see this. Jesus is coming to do something new. And he's going to use the old way to bring something new. And so these jars, they were used for ceremonial washing. They were used so that they could clean the outside. The Jewish people at this point had become so focused on these cleanliness laws that they had forgotten that these cleanliness laws were supposed to be a reflection of what was happening inside and in their hearts. And Jesus is telling them, I am going to use the thing that you want to use to make the good front, to put on a good show, and I am going to actually change you. Because the things that we do on the outside, the behavior modification, those are not things that actually change us. Jesus is telling, I have come to do something new. The real change happens on the inside. It doesn't happen on the outside. The outside is a fruit of the inside change. And Jesus is telling us that if we want real change in our lives, if we want real fulfillment, it comes from the inside. And Jesus is coming. He is the new wine. The old way was a bunch of rules stacked on top of rules that were a burden for everyone. And Jesus is telling us that he has come with a new way and a new wine, and it's going to start on the inside. Now remember, 20 to 30 gallons. So Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water. So they filled them to the brim. I love these servants. Like, these servants are awesome. They didn't have running water. We don't know how they had to get their water. Maybe it was a well, maybe it was a stream. But there are 6 jars, each 20 to 30 gallons each, and they are having to fill them. And they don't just fill them up full, they fill them to the brim. And I think that is an incredible statement for how they approach this thing that Jesus has asked them to do. And I skipped a verse. Please go back. Then he told them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. They did so. The master of the banquet is the guy who's in charge of the party. He's someone that the family would hire to come in and kind of set things. It's like a wedding coordinator, someone who's who's making sure that the party keeps happening. He's coming in, and they don't like test it. Jesus doesn't say, hey, test it, make sure it happened. He just told them to draw it out and take it to the master of the banquet. And then the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though. The servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and he said, and I think this is incredible for us, do not miss this next verse. Everyone brings out the choice wine first, And then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now. Isn't that the world? Isn't that what happens to us with sin? Brings out the best wine first. Something that tempts us into those decisions to try to use something else to fill that hole. And it always looks good at first. It always looks like it's going to be the answer. It always looks like it's going to be the thing that finally fulfills us, that finally brings purpose, that finally brings joy, that finally brings peace. Isn't that what we see? Isn't that what we experience? That it always looks good at first, but then it always becomes the cheap wine. It always leads the world's choices and the world's past and the things that we try to use to fulfill ourselves that are not Jesus start out looking great, and they never satisfy and they never fulfill. And if we are using other things to fill that place that is meant for Jesus, Jesus is telling us through this miracle, he's saying, I am the new wine and I never run out. Because Jesus saves the best for the last. A relationship with Jesus, his presence never fails, never runs out, and only gets better with time. And he saves the best for last, that when we finally pass from this earth, that we are going to experience the greatest wedding, the greatest party that we could ever be a part of in heaven. Jesus saves the best for last. The world will always run out and never satisfy. What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Jesus is trying to tell us something. He's trying to show us something. He's trying to tell us that he is the source that never runs out. Jesus is the source that never runs out. And through this miracle, his disciples believed in him. Jesus is trying to give us a sign. He's trying to show us that we need to stop trying to use these other things to fulfill us, to give us purpose, to give us peace, to give us joy. Because those things will always run out. But Jesus never does. Jesus is the source that never runs out. And when we let Jesus into our lives, when he becomes the source of our life, joy comes out. A joy that is not based on our circumstances. A joy that is not based on the things that we have. A joy that is not based on the relationships that we are in. A joy that is only based on the strong foundation of having a relationship with him, the one person who will never fail us. He will never run out. He will never go anywhere else. Jesus is always there. He is the source that never runs out. And when Jesus chose to make this his first miracle, he wanted to start his ministry by telling us, by showing us that if we want true life, if we want true fulfillment, true joy, true peace, the only choice that we can make is to find it in him. And if we want to be different, if we want to find it, we have to believe him like his disciples did. Believe him. Because your heart is going to tell you that it doesn't work. And your heart is going to tell you that the other thing is the real thing and Jesus is the fake thing. But we need to be like the disciples and we need to believe him when he tells us. What would happen in our lives, in our family, in the relationships that we have, in our community, in our neighborhoods if we found our true source in Jesus. If our true source of joy and fulfillment and peace could never be taken from us, could never run out, how much better parents would we be? How much better spouses would we be? How much better neighbors would we be? How much better friends would we be? If our circumstances did not determine our joy or our peace or our fulfillment, it's a relationship that does. A relationship that Scripture tells us can't be taken from you. What would our world look like if the church would finally find its source in Jesus? It would change everything, because your friends and your neighbors, when they see you going through difficult times, and it doesn't seem to affect you. It's not that we don't struggle, it's not that we don't make it through, but there's just something different. They're going to see it, and they're going to ask the question, how do you do this? And you get to share with them that you found the source that never runs out. Let's pray.